So we've seen the reports. I believe it's John Heyman. I've seen Bob Nightingale post it, that there is that belief among executives that Framber ends up in Baltimore, which puts a little pressure of Ryan. What if he doesn't?
And what if he doesn't? Like, that is the question, because while people are pointing to, well, what's the holdup? It's so obvious, which, again, it's not as always obvious as you think. There's so many things behind the scenes. But now that the years are getting knocked down, it seems, that's the reports as well, Zach. What is holding this up? And then it's leading to this next question. And this is crazy to me because I got asked this, and I know I'll talk about it tonight on the Hot Stove on 105.7. But the question that's been asked to me, Zach, will this offseason be a failure if the Orioles don't sign a frontline starter? And I'm thinking to myself out loud, I go, failure? Saying the word failure? And I'm going through, let's go through this offseason real quickly for the Baltimore Orioles, because overall, Zach, on the wish list that Mike Elias had and the needs that the team were looking to upgrade at, let's go through it. You added Taylor Ward, who right now, when you're looking at the market, would have been probably one of the better outfielders on the market, and he's an everyday player. You signed the best right-handed bat on the market in Pete Alonso. That's a good move. You reacquired Andrew Kittredge to help your bullpen. You traded for Shane Baz to add to your rotation, a guy that has upside to be a top 2 guy in your rotation, the upside, but he'll slot in as a 3 to 5 in your rotation, but the talent's there. Then you sign a closer. You got Ryan Helsley, which I'm not buying the Mets numbers. I'm not buying that, where taking out of his role, the Mets were in a full free fall. I'm going to trust the numbers that I've seen for the last few years with Ryan Helsley, which have been very dominant. So you got a closer who I believe is going to bounce back and can pitch at an all-star caliber level. So there's so many good parts there, Zach. But, man, the rotation and the team feels so much different if they did have a Ranger Suarez, if they did now sign a Framber Valdez. Because that's the part where people are still wondering, does it feel like it's enough? And there's so many pitching injuries that this team has had. What if that happens again? Mm-hmm. And it just seems like because Framber's value has dropped so much, that this is the perfect storm. I think 3 years gets the deal done, Zach. I really do. But that's the question. I kind of want to hear your thoughts, because I know you don't like the word failure being thrown out, because that's not a fair thing to say. But I do understand it's around the urgency or the need to add another frontline guy.
Yeah, it's not a failure. It's a disappointment. I think that's the perfect way to put it. It isn't a failure. You can't fail an offseason where you get the top right-handed power hitter in Pete Alonso. When you add 229 RBIs to your team with Taylor Ward and Pete Alonso, when you go get a closer, when you bring back your setup man in Kittredge, you trade for a young, high-end stuff, high-potential guy in Shane Baz. It's not a failure. It's a disappointment if they don't get that front-end guy, because that's what people felt like is the one missing piece. It is. And so I get it. I would be disappointed as disappointed as anyone. It would suck if they don't get a frontline guy. It's a disappointment. It's not a failure of an offseason, but it definitely leaves way more questions about this roster. It leaves you to sit there and go, okay, why? It opens up the can of worms of, okay, in May, June, July, before the deadline, if stuff is happening and the pitching's going down, pitching's not what you think it could be, because there's a lot of potential in the pitching staff, but there's not a lot of solid, we know what we're going to get from him guys. You could put Dean there. I think a healthy Eflin, pretty much what they're going to be. But besides that, you're hoping on potential. You're hoping Rodgers takes that, continues that next step. You're hoping Baz fulfills his potential. Bradish, it's all about staying healthy. If he's healthy, Kyle Bradish is a top 5 pitcher in baseball.
Yeah.
I think it is disappointing, but it's hard to say it's a failure of an offseason. But to say, if you would have told me that they left this offseason without a pitch starting frontline guy, I'd be disappointed as all get out, without a doubt.
I mean, the disappointed is a better way to describe that. You'd be disappointed. I think the reason why people would be more disappointed, Zach, is because the reports of how many times they're saying that the Orioles are in on this guy. The Orioles are in. They were really close to a deal with Ranger Suarez, but they didn't get him. You know, it's that constant conversation. Now, I want to reiterate this. If they don't sign Framber because they have their other reasonings for it, I'm still not going to be upset with that. The disappointment part would come from, well, then why wasn't a guy like Ranger Suarez then prioritized more? Why didn't you try to get to the finish line if Framber's not going to be your guy? And here's the reality, too, in sports, and we talked about this on the pitching market, Zach. Someone's going to be this year's Nick Pivetta. And we've said it before, but Nick Pivetta, 4-year, $55 million deal last year. So what? That's $14 million, just under $14 million a year, Zach. And he was a top 5-6 pitcher in the National League. Somebody is going to outplay their contract. It's a guarantee. Guarantee. But we don't know, and you can have this conversation after the season and say the Orioles went in a different direction and say they did get Zach Gallen and he outperformed his contract, or, you know, one of the other depth rotation pieces and they outperform their contract, or Shane Baz elevates to being a 2. That's all great. It's amazing. But it still is the question mark of, well, right now, do you feel 100% comfortable with where you're at? I think that the Orioles, and I've been on the record, they can go compete right now, Zach. We both agree. There's nothing about the competition. We had Westberg on yesterday, Albernez leading the ship. There is an intensity level there. But we also know in the flip of a switch, your pitching gets hurt, injuries happen across your lineup, you can be decimated and you can fall into a free fall. The Orioles did not have the depth at pitching last year. So for me, more so of it is getting Framber is not, or Zach Gallen, or whoever it's going to be, it's not that necessarily is going to mean they're going to pitch like an ace, Zach. But I think it further solidifies that if things were to go wrong, we have a buffer. And not only a buffer, we have guys that the level of outcomes is going to be better than if we didn't have Framber or Zach Gallen. That's how I view it. That's how it seems like to me.
Yeah, and I agree. It's one of those things where it would be really nice to have Framber, a guy that you know as you're probably slides into a 2 if we have a healthy Bradish. Having a guy that you look at and you know, hey, they are taking that next step. Because right now, with the current roster, like you just said, I believe they can compete. I think they can compete for a playoff spot for the AL East. But at some point, it's not about just competing. It's about, we want to win a World Series. And to do that, if you have the opportunity to sign a frontline guy like they do, you have to take it. And reports have come out about, it looked like there was a path where Ronher Suarez signs with the Orioles the week before he signed in Boston. And things kind of shifted. Boston pivots after pivot. Pivots after Bregman. They go and they're like, okay, we'll sign Ronher. We'll give you the exact deal the Orioles did. He goes there. And it just felt like, okay, now things are building. And if the Orioles were never involved in these conversations, I think you'd be even more disappointed. But I think there's also that letdown of everyone and their mothers reporting, hey, the Orioles are in on this. Hey, it looks like the Orioles are going to be the front team to get this guy. And then if they don't, I think that's where the reaction stems from even more, because everyone's like, well, if they wanted it to happen, why didn't you get it done? How do we keep getting outbid? Why are you always the bridesmaid, never the bride? Stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And that's the bigger part here, is just changing the narrative more than anything. And also for the Orioles case, if you don't sign somebody, then you're going to be aggressive during the season. And that price point will be higher. And if that's the case, Zach, then so be it. That's whether it's right now or in the summertime. Look, cool. Like that works out. It's the problem of if things were to go wrong early and you don't have the depth, what happens? What's next? Because you know what? That is what happened last year. The Orioles didn't have the starting pitching depth and the offense underperformed. Now, I'm not expecting a healthy Orioles offense to underperform like they did, Zach. I am not at all. I believe in that group. Westy, I think, is that glue. Polar Bear Pete, he's going to drive in runs. Gunner's going to play with his hair on fire or ass on fire, whatever you want it to be. But overall, the pitching, if you lose arms, that's a hard thing to make up. It's the same thing when I say earlier in the season, protect your bullpen. If your starters get hurt or your starters can't go deep into a game, it's a cycle that you don't want to get into in April. So the bigger part with the Orioles, it's not about a failure of making that this offseason has been so positive. But if you don't make a move, fans will be disappointed, number one. And two, you will face the risk that if the staff or one member or two goes down, that you're going to be scrambling before the season even gets going. And one more thing to throw in, Zach. I hope everyone stays healthy. It's the World Baseball Classic right now. One of your starters is going to be throwing in that, and you hope everything's good.
Yeah.
I hope everything's good with Dino. I want everyone to go out and play. I mean, Skeens is pitching, Skubal's pitching, but those are the risks. If you can mitigate your risk by adding a top-line guy, and it was worth the price that you set out to be, why not take it? And that's going to be the question that Oriole fans and at least the Orioles in general are going to have to make. And we'll find out here soon enough because it's January 23rd. Spring training, Zach, is in 3 weeks.
Crazy.
This shit is bananas. Bananas. When I move, you move.
Just like that.
Just like that. If you guys are new to the channel, hit that like and subscribe button. Ryan Ripken Show. We do this live every Monday through Friday right here on YouTube, X, and Facebook.